Hello, Dr. Michael Fisher, philologist, educator, philosopher, and interested human citizen of this planet and where we're going. I am here to do a short video on a new course that I just began just a couple months ago, and it's really did very well in terms of 10 students signed up. Well, that's important to me because I'll tell you a little bit of the background of that course. I want to tell you a little bit about what that course is about today, and basically say that I think I've got a good, quote, formula for teaching a course, even though I never teach anything the same twice in a row. But I have a rough idea of where I want to go with this course. And the course is called Understanding Fear and Its Effects on Humanity. Now, that's a course that came about and taught it at the Elder College here at Vancouver Island University in Nanaimo, BC, where I am. But there are students can sign up for that course from various provinces and around, and there were some. Again, 10 elders, meaning you have to be over 50. The instructor has to be over 50. It's a very low cost, just really good basic adult education design for people to be affordable, to come into a Zoom call and stay at home with your coffee, tea, whatever, and enjoy some learning together and building community around that learning of a topic of interest. Well, obviously, fear is not an easy topic to pitch. I've said that for many decades, since 1989, when I started focusing on research on fear and teaching about it, where I felt that there was definitely a shortage of good fear education. And often what I said was distorted, and I'm very critical, obviously, of most fear education that goes on. That aside, what ended up happening is this group was so enthusiastic right to the end. All 10 students stuck in virtually right to the end of the course. And that's unusual for me. I usually typically, when I teach a continuing ed course, for example, or even a workshop over a couple of days, several people, a certain percentage, 15 to 20% is my average, I think. Um, will tend to drop out or not. This isn't what I really wanted. This is too intense. We don't really like the instructor. We don't like where the course is going. It's not giving us what we need. And all those kinds of, you know, basically feedback that one can get. And sometimes you don't get the feedback. People just don't come the next day, or they drop out of the course at some point, delete, and they're off the Zoom. This was not the case in this particular course, and that's why I want to do a video on it. Something seems to definitely have happened over, so I'm talking 1989. I've been wanting to teach and teaching some courses, not as many as I'd like since 1989, but I've taught enough to know that how hard it is to get students to come, number one, to want to learn more about fear. It seems odd. It seems that that would be something that would make sense as a human being, that fear has such an impact, often very negative. And why wouldn't you want to learn more? Well, it's not a sexy topic. It is not attractive. People would much rather take a course on something much more attractive, like reaching your potential and becoming a millionaire, or love and compassion, or whatever it might be. All courses which may have their value, but I do not think drill down as deeply into the core of human nature, human condition, and the influence on our human potential. And I'm arguing that fear is a real wonderful construct to work with. Not saying it's the only or the most important thing to study and know better. No, but I'm saying it's very important to know better. So that's been my argument, my thesis. I've written many books and articles. You can look up online any of my work. I'll put maybe a few links here in this video, but I'm focusing on this course because I said something is happening differently. I've learned since 1989. There's a new, quote, market. There's a new consumer of learning. Not that I like to use that word, consumer of learning. I think just a new learner, a new adult, I'm going to speak of at this moment. And probably it's because I've had discussions with these students, again, all over 50, some in their 80s, 70s, 60s, that they think that there is a new felt experience they're having as a 60, 70, 80-year-old. that they have not had previously in their life. They sign up the course, and I'm saying they're all pretty much upper middle class people in this area, and well educated for the most part that I can tell. I don't know all of their backgrounds totally. And they're saying there's been a new experience of a kind of low grade chronic anxiety, they will often call it, just a disturbance psychically, energetically, uh, unsettledness, a kind of insecurity about things that they never used to be insecure about. Yes, part of that is getting older, they would tell me. But as I talk to the students, so I use this course also as a good research, case study in a way. Not that I did an official case study and I wasn't studying my students in the way that a researcher might, but it's just part of the exchanging that I'm an observer, I'm also a researcher, and I'm also a theorist. So I think about education and what outcomes are happening, what are the students saying, what are we learning together and communicating verbally or non-verbally. So yeah, I'm taking in a lot, and I'm synthesizing a lot, and I'm making notes and thinking about, as a collective, what is happening to the adult population today. So I'm speaking from the place of North America, and yes, these are all white students, learners, but there is something happening that I would never usually get 10 students to put out a course on fear. Most of my courses on fear never run. This one did, and it started, in September 14th and went to, late October. So 6-week course, 1.5 hours. It's not that hard, or there's no exams. Elders can sign up. And that is the kind of feedback I got over and over. They would end the class and say things like, there's a couple of different pieces of feedback besides they felt this low-grade chronic anxiety and felt that they wanted to know more. And I was very clear in their description of the course, which I'll read in a second, that this was not a self-help, make me feel better course. And of course, that alone makes it not easy to pitch and market in a consumerist society where everybody or a lot of people want to feel better. I was really coming from the position, I'm not really caring if you feel better or not. That's great if you do, that's bonus, but I want us to learn something that is not being taught elsewhere, and I have a lot to offer in that area. So I offer my expertise. They come, they share their life experience, which a good adult ought to in an adult education course. And it's the combination of that I think is a really powerful interaction. And experts, like a content expert myself, and then somebody who's also lived as a 72-year-old, I can speak and talk to people in the elder category. So one of the things that they also said very quickly, after 1, 2, 3 classes in, they would give me feedback here and there. They're really liking the course, but found it difficult in a way, or challenging to their brain. What sometimes can set in as a kind of a lazy brain syndrome of elderly and sitting back and maybe not pushing yourself that hard intellectually. So I had to go through that with them, and that's fine. That's part of the learning. That's part of getting older, and still trying to keep our brains flexible and resilient to being able to learn and unlearn old patterns and learn new ones. Well, that's challenging enough for children. It's challenging enough for adolescents, but definitely as you get older and older, hard to change your ways would be the common language. So it's hard to learn something new. And most adult education, in my experience, in the continuing education area especially, I'm not talking about people who go into degrees when they're older, very challenging degrees, but the people generally who go to continuing education courses often want to go learn something new, yeah, a little bit, but they don't want to be challenged that much, not in their fundamental ways of orienting to the world. Yeah, that's the key part here, folks. This is a course of investigating, and my challenging as a content expert, not just on fears, but on the very way we perceive the knowledge about fears and how we organize that knowledge to try to make sense of reality and therefore affects our behaviors, the behaviors of others, and everything else we do. I was challenging their worldview about ways to conceive of the very notion of fear itself. So it wasn't just a course about fear. So let me read the introduction. They basically said to me that it was hard on their brain, but some of them liked it. I think some a little less liked it, but most of them said, we liked it. We liked it. It made me think all week long after one of your talks. Understanding fear and its effects on humanity. I'll just read from the brochure from VIU Elder College. This is an introductory course on the nature and role of fear, individually and collectively. In the last 3 decades, especially since 9/11, fear has, for various reasons, become a growing topic of major concern in several academic disciplines, operations of democracy, and even in governance, and in its uses in business, advertising, and popular culture. Explore, in other words, the invite is explore your personal relationship to fear, the importance of multiple perspectives on fear, and come to critique the normal socialization and the culture of fear itself. I'll just read my bio that is on the course thing so that you can get a little bit of a sense of who I am if you don't already know me. Some of you will, of course, my viewers here. I have a PhD. I'm a retired educator who has focused on the impact of psychological, cultural, political, and philosophical issues on education, and how it often, education, fails to emancipate us from the oppressions that hurt us. He is also an author of over 200 articles, has published 15 books, and is a popular teacher on YouTube. Yours truly right here, YouTube. Michael has taught adult education for over 45 years, has spent several years as a school teacher in the public system, grades 5 to 8, and has been involved in youth and family rehabilitation work. I was a therapeutic manager of a facility for troubled youth and their families for 10 years. Michael's research has focused on the phenomenon of fear and fearlessness since late 1989. He also refers to himself as a fearologist. That's not a small point, folks. I stuck that on the end of the bio, putting this into public space, remember, at an institution, mainstream institution, and their little Elder College program, right? Kind of a low-key program in terms of priorities for universities, but they obviously know there's a good program and elders want to learn. But I stuck it right there in public space on that website of that institution that he refers to himself as a fearologist. I wondered if that would either turn people off to not come, or it would turn people on to come. It probably did a little bit of both, but I know at least the people who came, when I asked them about it, my students in the class, what do you think about that statement that I put, a fearologist is going to be teaching you? And I think we agreed, and they agreed, there's a certain curiosity, just purely, I'm curious about why that would be different. What would it be like to listen to a fearologist? Number one, whoever a fearologist is, it's kind of weird. Not your normal way of understanding a teacher. But that I put it in because I wanted to twig the consciousness of the reader, the potential student, to think that, oh, okay, I'm not just coming to a course on how to manage, conquer, transform your fears. No. A fearologist sounds different. It's a little deeper, it's a little wider, it's a little broader in the scope. And that's exactly what I defined in the first class. I said, well, let's explore for a while what a fearologist is, what the origin of a fearology as a study and discipline of the nature and role of fear and its effect on life. That's the simple definition of fearology. So that became part of the discourse, right? It became part of the relationship with the students of they were not just coming to a course, and there are many courses out there in the world, have been for decades, on how to manage your fears, how to improve your fear coping skills, whatever it is. And all of those are taught mostly by psychologists and or organizational coaches or some kind of people involved in helping people reach their human potential. And they generally argue fear is a good side. It has a true side, but it also has a very negative side. And it can be something that very limits you from you reaching your potential, right? And your spiritual development, whatever it is, your healing, your trauma. And I don't disagree with a certain fundamental reality of those discourses, those ways of talking and speaking about fear. But as a fearologist, I do not stop with that view. I do not reduce myself to that view, often based on a biopsychological model, neurobiopsychological model, if you want, of the nature and role of fear in the human being. So I do not stop there. I do not even start there. A fearologist has a much larger expansion of scope and range and multiple perspectives that I synthesize and bring in a kind of intersectional dialogue to the students. So I introduce them to the sociology of fear, the ecology of fear, the architecture of fear, the geography of fear, the politics of fear, the philosophy of fear, and I could go on and on. The list is not short. And the students immediately are starting to try to make sense of this multiple perspectives on fear. And it's not just, multiple perspectives from you have a view, I have a view. No, I'm talking about whole disciplines of knowledge and knowing and the history of those disciplines and how they've accumulated a particular favorite way of understanding fear, the role and the nature, and therefore educating us about how to manage that fear from that point of view, that disciplinary perspective. And psychology of fear has been the dominant force, I argue, in the course. And I give reasons and I show the data and literature of different reasons why it's a reasonable argument to say that psychology of fear has dominated and predominated. Before that, it was a little more philosophy, and before that, and still ongoing, a huge impact by religion. And that means various religions that have a very specific view of their understanding of the nature and role of fear and how to manage it, cope it, transform it, whatever the language might be, how to be not afraid and therefore be closer to the divine as love, and all of those kinds of theologies of fear and love. I touch on all those in the course. I touch on so many things in the course with this multiple perspective approach, which I call a critical, integral, holistic approach. I know that's a lot of language. Critical in that I do not accept, and I try to encourage the students immediately from the beginning. You can be critical of knowledge about fear. You don't have to just take it in and think, oh, that's the expert telling me because I heard it on a podcast, I heard it in a lecture, I read it on a newspaper, TV, in a book, or I heard it from somebody who's in my family and they're very wise and they have their view of fear and fear and its management. All sources, is the idea, are put under a complexity from the fearologist's point of view, under a complexity perspective. And I even go as far to stretch the students to think about, even read some pieces, and we can watch videos. I have them do a bit of research on the internet. And we start to come around to see that there are certain biases, right, and contradictions in the very defining of fear itself. And it actually, the more you do in research, the more confused you start to become if you really do deep in a lot of research. If you just do a tiny little bit, then you can, oh, that's the answer. Oh, no, that's great. Let's go with that. Well, that's the easy way out. That's what we sort of call the lazy person's approach to learning, and sometimes called the Reader's Digest version of the definition of fear and so on. But the implications are important. It's not just about the defining of fear. It's about once you define it, then you think about through that definition, right? That vocabulary that you've adopted and the perspectives of it and the assumptions behind that definition's construction, then you follow that, and that becomes a course for your life and how you live it in relationship to fear. So this is a course about understanding fear, your relationship to it, and its relationship to the entire society, to the world, and to evolution of consciousness, to history, etc. I don't want to give away more about the content of the course. I'm just giving you little tidbits of a feel for the course, and that in some sort of fundamental way, I do various approaches each week. Again, only an hour and a half, it's very short, but I will also send out a set of notes afterwards, after the class. And they're what I call the cheat sheet notes of some of the things I remember that I talked about in the lecture, because I don't always talk about things in the lecture or the conversations that we have. I don't just lecture. That I don't always remember what I do, so I sometimes write them down. I also don't follow my outline before the class, which I think, oh, I'll follow this and I'll be ordered. I'm very fluid, very creative, and emergent with the students and their interests. So I do give this cheat sheet out, and that just summarizes. So you get that after each session. It allows you to kind of go back and integrate, because I know what I'm presenting from a fearological point of view is not easy to recalculate and recalibrate into the kind of conditioning of the norm and the socializing of knowledge about the nature and role of fear and how we ought to manage it. In other words, I'm challenging the entire education of our management of fear. And that includes the conceptualization and the definition of fear. So you get a sense of what this course is about, even though it sounds very simple, understanding fear and its effects on humanity. And a lot of people want to talk about all the fears, the fear of terrorism, the fear of COVID, the fear of, and I say, well, those are fine. You can bring those to the course, those of your interests. Maybe you want to know the difference between how males and females, come to the nature and role of fear. We do talk about that a little bit here and there, but because it's a very short course, 6 weeks only, and an hour and a half each class, there's only so much, and so we're mostly skipping along the surfaces of the water like a wonderful dragonfly and dipping in. But you can take that study, of course, into your own during the week. And then what we're doing now, I'm excited to say, is I ask the students at the end of the course, would you like to still keep meeting with me facilitating? Not that I would be the teacher, leader, but I would be a facilitator and facilitate us. Now, whoever wants to join after the class to continue on a kind of learning community, building a communitas of interest, of similarness, of value that people would want to continue and say, yeah, let's keep pursuing this learning and sharing and go deeper and broader. And so far, I just want to say yesterday, we had our first gathering of that group, and near half of the students showed up, and this is very exciting to me. As an adult educator, it's very fulfilling to know that learners want to now take charge of their learning. And that's really what I'm encouraging to do, not follow me. Yes, I like it when they're in the class to follow me somewhat. That's so that we get on the same plateau, a certain stage of all kind of knowing some of the orientation that this course is presenting. So I'm talking about building community, grassroots movements on improving our understanding of the nature and role of fear and its effect on humanity from this basis that there is some sort of fundamental course that needs to be different than what we've been taught. I feel I'm qualified to do that. I can be criticized. Yes, the students can do that if they wish. Help me improve it. But I come with a very strong 35 years of working on this, that I think I kind of know where to start that course. That's the unique spin-off, the unique takeoff from the norm of how we've been conditioned to know about fear and ourselves. And so it's that ecology, that relationship of both, that is so intriguing, and it is so fundamentally important to the nature of how we respond. The other thing the students really showed and shared why they took this course, as I asked them several times, is they are so aware not only of this low-grade chronic anxiety, which I also experience and have watched increase post-COVID, etc., is that they want to deal with in some way better, or try to understand more effectively in a meaningful way, why the increasing polarization and the dangerous violence and the world war possibilities. We're seeing more wars. Gaza, Israel, Ukraine, Russia are just symptoms of, again, of this. We're seeing the civil war virtually in the United States. And the polarizing nation in Canada, this really threw a lot of Canadians. I'm hearing that, right? This is what the students are telling me. Them and their friends were polarized. They couldn't even talk about the same issue about masking and vaccines and the trucker strike. And were you supportive of it, or were you against it? Or they are very concerned as grandparents. Most of them are grandparents, not all, perhaps. And they're concerned about their kids and their kids who are alive now today and went through COVID-19. See what I'm saying? This is the new turn. It's like a fear turn in history. It's a fear story, not a history and a herstory, but a fear story. A fear story is emerging that needs to be told. And I think we're on the cusp of telling this new fear story of humanity. Welcome to my course if you want to join. I have a little fun quiz that I even gave them at the end of the course. Some 30-some questions. Say, check your knowledge up, see what you learned. I'm not going to bug you about it, but I'll mark it if you send it in. A few students did. So these are the kind of things that I believe are just a really good part of education. It's not about grading people and judging. It's about, how do I assist the best learning? So if you're interested in taking this course, I'm going to be teaching another one at Comox Elder College. So at Comox Valley Elder College, I don't have all the fine details at this time. It's a February into March course. And it's the same course. I will not teach it exactly the same. And if you are students and you took my last course at VIU Elder College, you can also take this one, no problem at all with me. I think you'll circle and find a secondary learning of the material, and swirling with it will take you to definitely new learnings. It always works that way. I mean, I don't ever get bored of this material, because I just find there's something about the topic fear so fascinating, and always creative, and always going in different layers. So you're welcome to check that out in February, March. And again, those students that take that course and out of that course may join with the students from the VIU course. I'm not going to be teaching at VIU Elder College next year, because they have canceled their Elder College program there due to funding cuts. But I'm saying I will keep teaching this course in as many venues as I can, and will continue to build a groundswell of this learning community on this most important topic, fear education. And it's, again, not about just me, about us. It's about the future. And this is what the students have told me. They want something to offer to the next generations. And I said, wow, from my point of view, it's an educator's dream. And I didn't know this going into it, teaching elders like this. But I began to see that some of them were in the course. They would teach some of the ideas or share some of the insights from the course coming through me and the materials they were looking at, and share it with their son or daughter. And then that son or daughter could share it. They would sometimes, the father would share it with their grandchildren. This is like 2 generations passed down of quick knowledge, just like that. An educator's dream, to know that you can possibly have that kind of impact. So I think you get the point. I'm pretty excited about the course and the possibilities of it as a foundation. And then there will be a second level, a third level course, no doubt, developed. There's so much more depth and complexity I could teach. But I'm glad to start, several, maybe go a year or two on this first level before we jump into a second level, maybe. I'll see how it goes. Okay. Again, you can contact me. I'll leave my email below if you're thinking of signing up for one of these courses at some point, and I'll keep you on the email list. Okay.